I My name is Lily, and I have severe dyslexia. And when I say severe, I mean when I was tested at 17, I was put in the 1 percentile for reading and writing in the United States, which means I was the worst in the United States. You can't really get any lower than 1%. Now, this was hard for me as a kid because I can't read or write really at all, but that wasn't really like the worst part about school. Like, it was hard not being able to read and write, and now at 21 years old I still don't think I can really read or write to any standard of anyone else. But that's not why I hated school as a child. I was very smart and I could figure out my homework and figure out things, but I really hated, for one, because of the fact that I was different and that no one understood why I was different. And when I was younger, I didn't even really understand why I was different. But I've done a lot of research and a lot of understanding what dyslexia is, and so it's called a processing disorder, which actually means that my brain works differently. This is the easiest way to explain it. Like, say my brain wires are wired completely different than someone else's, and they're crazy and all over the place, and things don't always connect or fire straight. Your wires are straight, and you think something and it makes sense and it all works together, and you read something and it makes sense. When I read something, I will look at the word for 2 minutes and go, why does it say my? That's not mine. And then I'm like, oh no, that says your. Oh. And it's just because there's this big disconnect of what I'm seeing. I know what my looks like, I know what yours looks like, I know how to spell them, but when I read, it doesn't work. And when I talk, it doesn't always work, which is a big part of why it was really hard as a kid, because I sounded different than other kids. I have, again, severe dyslexia. It comes in ranges of severity, and one of the worst cases just in like the United States. So I think that it's maybe harder for me than some other people with dyslexia. It doesn't show as much. Their wires are a little bit more straight than mine. Mine are very, very confusing. Now, the second reason why school was really hard was because I like to read. I love books. I can read to myself, but I can't read out loud. Right now, I'm a 21-year-old adult, and I could probably not read you a simple book, like, out loud. I can read it, I just can't read it out loud because of the disconnect. When I look at a book, I don't consider myself reading. I look at the words and I recognize it and I understand the story, but I fill in so much blank. I'm not really reading. Now, this is a very hard thing to explain, and I don't think I could make any of you guys understand unless you were dyslexic and you felt what I feel. But as a kid in a school, I was asked to read out loud a lot, and I couldn't do it. I sounded like the stupidest kid in school, and I hated that. I'm not stupid, but I was seen as stupid for the way that I talk and not being able to read out loud or write a simple note to my friends. Like, I didn't even pass notes in school because I was so scared I would spell things wrong. Like, as a 5th grader, not passing notes, it's a little weird, and was a little weird, and I just felt different than the other kids. Now, I was tested at 7. I think my mother probably knew when I was 4 that I was dyslexic, but I didn't use real accommodations till I was 14. I went to a Catholic school for most of my life, but I did I ended up going to private school for a year to try to help with the reading and stuff, and the public school was worse in the whole making me feel different than the other kids. At least when I was in the private school, I did everything else with everyone. I wasn't getting accommodations, but I felt a little bit more similar to the other students, and that wasn't good. I was in school reading so much slower than the other kids, not being able to finish a test as fast as the other kids, and doing it anyway. I would just sit there and guess on all the questions because I was so scared to be the last one handing in my test, which isn't okay, but the ones that I didn't guess on, I got all right, so I got okay grades, and I'd rather get okay to bad grades than be different. When I was in middle school, it wasn't cool to be different, and I know that right now there's a lot of kids out there who feel different, and I don't think that's okay, and I don't think that accommodations are truly the answer. They are. Kids with disabilities need accommodations, but they also need other students to understand why they need those accommodations. It's not fair to take kids out of a classroom full of normal learners and make them do something else because they're different. You're singling them out, but you have to single them out. I needed to go to a different space to take a test, but I didn't want to because I didn't want to be different than the other kids. So I think that as a future teacher, and to all of you, if you're teachers or future educators, you guys need to educate students about disabilities, about dyslexia, about ADHD, about any of them. Like, I personally think that in 4th grade, like how they have, some schools have health class or they have library. I don't know if they have library anymore, but they have these, or art class or music class. They have these classes for an hour once a week or 45 minutes once a week. I think there should be a class on disabilities where students get to learn what dyslexia is. They try to understand what other students are going through. They get to understand how a blind person, like I was taught about how deaf people go through in the world and how blind people, and about how people in wheelchairs feel, and I was taught that through my special education classes or my disability classes, but in college, because I'm going to be a teacher. But I think that that should be taught to students at a young age, because when you understand what other people are going through, it's easier to accept them, and then those people don't feel different. And something that I've realized as an adult is I love the way that my brain works. I love that I'm dyslexic, and that might not make sense talking about all the struggles and how bad it is for me, because it's not really that bad. Like, who cares if I can't really read that well? I've made it this far. I can read a book. I can tell you a story. I can honestly tell you a summary better than most people I know that can actually read every word for word. I immerse myself in the story, and maybe I'm not getting every word right, but I'm there. And you know, the great thing about dyslexia is it's a processing disorder. My brain works differently than your brain. Think how amazing that is. I see the entire world differently. That excels my art, that excels my story. My whole life is different because I see the world differently. And as an adult, I love that. As a child, all I wanted to do was be the same, but no one sat there and explained to the other students why I was different. No one explained to me why I was different. All I did was feel left out. And if we're explained and we understand, of course we're going to be other students are going to be accepting of different kids, of different learners. When they understand why these kids need extra time, they're like, go for it. And that's why I had accommodations in high school, because I would explain to my friends why I needed accommodations in high school, and then they would get mad at me if I didn't take my accommodations. But as a 5th grader, I didn't have that confidence to tell other students, and I didn't even know as a 5th grader that that's what I needed. But I don't want sorry, my computer shut off, sorry. I don't want any other child growing up with dyslexia to think that something is wrong with them, because dyslexia is a gift. I go around life not reading signs, so when I went to France, I felt perfectly fine. Everyone was like, what? I can't read anything. And I was like, this is just a normal Monday for me, which was pretty awesome. I felt completely comfortable in another country, not understanding, not reading, because I don't read on a daily basis. So it opens up different doors, and I think that kids should love who they are, and they would love who they are if they understood and they were accepted. So I just want you all as future teachers to make it easier on us disability kids and our time. Thank you for listening.